What's the crusade you're going on? A mission to live your life's purpose and passion. What if this year is the last year of your life? What's your God-sized dream? What do you stand for? Live your best life this year. Now, that's the time. I'm going on a crusade to change people's mindsets every single day. So are you on board?
Wakey, wakey, rise and shine, my little sunshines. Todd Durkin here, Todd Durkin Impact Show. I hope you're super fired up for today's show. 5 reasons you may not be losing weight that have nothing to do with diet and exercise. That's right. This is the second portion of the interview I did with Dr. Carleigh GoLightly. Great reviews last week, great feedback. Thank you so much. Episode 245 was hot. And y'all were telling me about it. Thank you for the shares on the social media. Thank you for your questions and comments as always. Keep them coming from all over the world. Let's dive into here with Dr. Carleigh GoLightly today. Speaking of health and wellness and vitality and vibrance, these things, the Dalai Lama has a great quote that I shared in my talk last night. I want to open up today's episode with. The Dalai Lama, when asked what surprised him most about humanity, answered, man. Because he sacrifices his health in order to make money. Then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health. And then he's so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. The result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he's never going to die and then dies having never really lived. Great quote. One of my favorite movies, Shawshank Redemption, Andy Dufresne. He said something, get busy living or get busy dying. Similar to the Dalai Lama, are you fully living? And if you're not, today's episode with Dr. Carleigh GoLightly is going to really help you live fully. So without further ado, let's go to the second portion of my interview here today, episode 246. 5 reasons you may not be losing weight that have nothing to do with diet or exercise.
Dr. Carleigh, you speaking of the 4 doctors, I did want to just shift a little bit here. You recently gave a TFT. We have our training fellow trainers at Fitness Quest 10. And as a coach, one of the things that we do is we help people lose weight or lose fat, get in better shape, get in a better mindset. And you gave a presentation I want to touch on today, 5 reasons weight loss isn't working that have nothing to do with diet or exercise. Mike, this is going to be very interesting. So obviously we all know we want Dr. Movement in there and Dr. Diet, but if you're doing Dr. Movement and Dr. Diet and you're not losing fat or weight like the way you want to, I want to share these 5 today on the podcast episode and talk about those 5 things. The first one you shared, possibly if you have a decent diet and your exercise is in line, what else could be going wrong? Because you're not seeing the scale budge or the in-body's not coming down. The first one you talk about, the hormones are out of balance. Talk about that, please.
Yeah. So this is the first place that I look to whenever someone is having a difficult time losing weight, because it's something that it's really common. Mm-hmm. So the primary hormones that I'm looking at are testosterone, mostly for men, but for women as well. Estrogen and progesterone for women. I'm looking at also for both genders the growth hormone and thyroid hormone, along with leptin and ghrelin too, to a lesser extent. So the thing about these hormones is that they are major metabolic regulators for the body, and they all exist with this very intricate web of interactions, right? And so the reason that I did this presentation the way that I did, so, the 5 reasons it isn't working that have nothing to do with diet and exercise, is because you guys here at Fitness Quest, you guys are the experts in the diet and exercise, right? You got that down, right? So I know that your clients here are being taken care of without a doubt, mm-hmm. right? So they're going to have that foundation and piece. But the question is, so if that's not working, now we've got to look a little bit deeper internally and figure out why it's not working. Mm-hmm. And usually that has something to do with some kind of metabolic set point that's going on inside of the body that is just preventing you, for whatever reason, from reaching that goal, right? And these hormones, when they're out of balance, they can alter that metabolic set point, right? Meaning where your body comfortably stores weight and how it comfortably stores weight, right? So in terms of those specific hormones, I won't go into too much detail. Testosterone is a pretty obvious one for guys, right? We know that when testosterone's low, there's a whole load of issues that can come along.
So what, just so people know, testosterone should be for males or females. What should the range be on that?
Yeah. So the range that you'll see when you get your blood drawn and you look at testosterone levels, it's going to be between like 200 and 1,000, right? I like to have my guys between the 700 to 900 range, right? That's where I find is the most optimal for not only their physical performance, but how they feel mentally as well. And then also for disease prevention.
And sexual drive.
Okay. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's
Okay.
important. Yeah. And then so for estrogen and progesterone, for women, this exists in a very delicate balance. To talk about the balance of estrogen and progesterone, so estrogen is a very proliferative hormone, meaning it causes the proliferation of tissues and it also makes you hold water, right? Progesterone has almost the exact opposite. So it's protective against too high of levels of estrogen, right? So progesterone is also a diuretic, meaning it helps you to release water, right? So what we see a lot of today is women who have something called estrogen dominance. And that's primarily because of the different foods that we eat, the plastics that we're exposed to, some of the pesticides in our foods. They're called xenoestrogens, basically outside sources of estrogen that we come into contact to. This can also be an issue for men as well, by the way, having estrogen dominance, more estrogen than they're supposed to, particularly if they are overweight and a lot of their testosterone is being transformed into estrogen.
Okay. So what should the estrogen progesterone numbers be for a female?
Roughly in a 10-to-1 ratio.
10-to-1.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any truth? Do you remember a couple of years ago, it was like if you avoid soy, because if you eat too much soy, it's going to jack your estrogen up. So don't eat edamame. I'm like, what? I love edamame. So it's because let's set the record straight, because y'all are laughing out there because I know you heard the same thing, and fellas especially, like, got to stay away from the soy. Truth to that or no?
Well, you'd have to eat a whole lot of edamame to do that. You'd have to be mainlining the edamame.
All right, good.
So enjoy your edamame, everyone.
Garlic edamame is the best.
So good.
All right, good. I just want to, I'm asking questions that y'all wanted me to ask. I am. So good news today. Eat edamame.
Eat edamame. Enjoy it. Don't worry about your estrogen levels if you're going to.
So 10-to-1 is for both men and women is ideal, or
no,
women?
it's a little bit different. A little bit different for men, right?
Okay.
So for men, you're going to see estrogen levels. They're going to want to be much lower. Yeah, much lower. And the baseline for that is like, I think it's like 20, if I'm remembering off the top of my head for women.
And what about growth hormone?
Growth hormone's a fun one. So just like men go through andropause, which is the decline of testosterone as we get older, women go through menopause, which is the decline of estrogen and progesterone as we get older. There's also something called somatopause. And that means that your growth hormone goes down, right? So growth hormone, we usually think of it in puberty, right? That's what makes us sprout up. It makes our bones grow. It makes our joints grow. It makes muscles grow and everything like that. It's also really important in our later years as well. It's basically, it's anti-aging, right? Is what growth hormone does. So it maintains skin elasticity. It maintains blood vessel elasticity. It helps with collagen production, maintains joint lubrication. It also changes the way that the body will store and utilize fat. Right. Okay. So when growth hormone is low, the typical person that I'll see is they'll kind of have stretchy, kind of flabby skin, right? And then they'll have a lot of abdominal weight gain, right? So it's kind of concentrated here. And even though they have, say stellar exercise and diet habits, they just can't lose that last little bit. The last piece of it is,
hold on. So if my waistline is growing and my skin is stretching, does that mean I have my growth hormone is in a severe decrement?
Might be.
Gosh. Or does it mean I'm eating too much and I don't have Dr. Diet in there? Just so we know. How do we get that tested? Can we go to an allopathic doctor and get that tested, or do we need to see a naturopathic doctor?
You can certainly request it from an allopathic doctor.
Okay.
I will say that's sometimes I have patients who, they've got insurance and they would like to try to, go to their doctor at Sharp or whatever and get it tested through there. Every once in a while I'll have a doc who's like totally open to it and they'll do whatever tests I request. For the most part, I will have to request it for them. Usually I can get the testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. The growth hormone is one that's a little bit harder. And so growth hormone, we don't have a growth hormone marker in our blood work. We have to test something called IGF-1. That's the best marker that we have to estimate growth hormone.
Okay. Good stuff. Hormones, get them in balance. Fantastic. Let's go to the second reason weight loss may not be working.
Yeah. So the second reason is that you have blood sugar swings that are out of control. So this is one that primarily has to do with the way that your body is able to dispose of glucose that's inside of your blood, right? Okay. So glucose equals sugar, right? So we know we're all pretty familiar with this concept of glycemic variability, which just means blood sugar swings, right? Mm-hmm. Glycemic variability means your blood sugar goes up and down in response to the foods that you eat. Right? That's how we're supposed to work physiologically. But it's what does your body do with that blood glucose once it's high, i.e. what are your blood glucose disposal systems? How healthy are they? Right? When we've got people who have really unhealthy blood glucose disposal, that's where we start to see diseases like obesity, diabetes, insulin resistance pop up.
Where's that coming from? The food you eat or the timing?
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of both going on in there. So definitely some of the food that you eat. So figuring out like some foods will spike your blood sugar, your particular blood sugar more than someone else's. So say for instance, a lot of people do these continuous glucose monitor things and they'll figure out that they're fine eating white rice, but when they eat a banana, their blood sugar just goes out of control. Right. And so part of it is becoming attuned with some of those cues that you will know when you eat something that spikes your blood sugar a little bit too much and stresses your body's ability to produce insulin, right? Which is another hormone that we have that helps to shuttle that sugar into your cells so that it can be used as fuel.
Okay, good. So you monitor that. And if the blood sugar swings are too high, could be a reason why you're not losing weight.
Absolutely.
Number 3 of 5. What's the third?
Gut health.
Gut health.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this. I sometimes struggle. Like, is this legit gut health? Talk to me about gut health.
Yeah, it is legit. It's very legit. So particularly what I'm talking about with gut health is, are there infections or inflammation that are going on inside of your gut, right? So actually, I was just seeing an article about this earlier today where the whole idea of intestinal permeability, aka leaky gut, right, has actually...
Leaky gut syndrome. It just sounds so bad. Leaky gut. I got a leaky gut.
Every time I say it to someone, their face just like drops.
Of course, it sounds disgusting.
And in some ways it kind of is, right?
LGS, leaky gut syndrome.
Yeah. But the reality is it's now being linked to things like, again, diabetes, obesity, metabolic disorders, Alzheimer's, right? These are some big deal things that we're seeing affect a huge portion of our population, right? And the estimates for, what it's going to cost us to take care of some of these chronic diseases are huge. And the fact that we're now able to link it back to the integrity of your gut is a big deal, because that's something that we can do proactively years in advance to try to help people never develop these things ever in their life.
So what are maybe the top 3 things that one should do to optimize their gut health?
You asked me this question the other day, and I thought it was
I'm asking it so we can now share it with thousands of people.
Yeah, I love that. So number 1, I alluded to this earlier with the doctor diet, right? So this was cutting out the gluten and the processed foods, right? Getting back to that inflammatory nightmare. We don't want that. You want to make sure that you're reducing inflammation as much as humanly possible inside of your gut. Right. Number 2, I would say is, let's see, which one do I want number 2 to be?
So take out gluten, take out processed foods.
Right. So I would say number 2 would be actually not to eat when you're stressed. Okay. Yeah, not to eat.
Not to eat when you're stressed. Okay, I'm going to get off on a tangent here, but that's hard to do.
It is hard to do.
Because you're stressed and the chocolate-covered almonds start talking to you like you deserve the almonds. You're all laughing because I got this relationship with chocolate-covered almonds in the evening. They actually talk to me through the cupboard. They talk. They're like, Todd, you had a great day. You deserve me. And I'm like, okay, I'll just only have one handful. And they talk. But anyway, so I digress. You said, what was it?
Not to eat when you're stressed. Yeah.
So it becomes, what I always talk about is don't base it on your emotions. Based on, do you want it or do you need it? If you need it, eat it. If you want it, don't eat it. Yeah. Okay, good. Third one.
Number 3 would be to eat more soluble fiber.
Soluble fiber. What is that?
Fiber.
Fruit?
So that's primarily, fruit's a good example, beans, legumes, and then also you can find it in things like sweet potatoes as well. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because soluble fiber is what your gut bacteria will use to break down and create something called short chain fatty acids. And that's their food, that's their fuel. It also creates fuel for that inside the gut lining so that it can heal and repair itself.
Okay, so those are good. And just what about probiotics? Where does it fit in there? Is that something that's good for gut health?
It can be. It can be. I will say, just from my clinical perspective, sometimes I see probiotics worsening things. So particularly when I see a lot of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, right? And so these are people who literally have bacteria that have grown up from the large intestine where they should be to the small intestine where they shouldn't be. They take probiotics, they're going to make everything worse, right? Because they've got too much bacteria. Sure. Right. Okay, so it's not for everyone. And if you're someone who notices you take probiotic and you feel a little bit more gassy, bloated, and uncomfortable, they just might not be for you.
Is there a statistic that says how many people these days are battling some form of ill gut health?
Oh, that's a great question. I would love to know that. But I mean, I would say from my experience, 85% of the people that come into my office have some kind of gut health issue.
I just wonder in general, because those are coming in they're very proactive for their health. Exactly. Those who aren't, obviously they're like, I don't feel good, or I got this LGS, like leaky gut syndrome, back again.
We'll do a whole podcast on that alone.
On the LGS. Number 4 of 5. 5 reasons weight loss isn't working that have nothing to do with diet or exercise. Number 4, you have down as stress levels.
Stress levels. Yeah. Stress levels being out of control. So this all comes back to something called the HPA axis, which is how your brain talks to your adrenal glands and basically tells your body what to do, how to respond to stress, right? So those adrenal glands, they secrete a fun little hormone called cortisol, which most people are aware of, right? So cortisol is great in acute scenarios, right? We need it to be able to respond to stressors, right? Yep. So that's important, and it's normal for cortisol to be secreted. What we don't want is that constant hit of cortisol going on every single day throughout our lives, right? Which is what a lot of people experience. So cortisol in short-term exposures, it's anti-inflammatory. It gives you a boost of blood sugar, right? That's one of the things that it does. And it also gives you a little bit of energy as well, right? So it's a good thing when it's in short-term exposures, right? When it becomes a chronic exposure, cortisol is highly what we call catabolic.
So like if it was maybe like a pandemic that was 2.5 years long and there's a lot of stress, that's not considered short term, I'm assuming.
No, definitely not.
So guys, I said I saw Dr. Carleigh last week. I got my, all my panels and I'm waiting the results back here. And maybe we should make that a separate episode because I'm a little afraid of what we might find when it comes to stress levels over the last 2 years of trying to save the world. But can anyone else relate? Y'all laugh like, yeah, me too, TD. So Dr. Carleigh is going to be monitoring closely yours truly because I'm a little scared about this one here. So we'll circle back around it. Matter of fact, please let me know. If you want that to be a future episode of, yes, Todd reveals his complete panel of stress and cortisol, let me know, and maybe I'll do that. But Dr. Carleigh can't. So cortisol, keep going, the stress levels. We all know everyone is under a lot of stress right now. I'll say most people are under a lot of stress with everything going on. It could be even just you're a parent or you're in a job or you own a business and all of the crazy mandates and things that you got to deal with because of the times we're in on that. So how do you just, for you, how would you suggest someone who has high stress? Is there your top 2 or 3 things beside the 4 doctors that one needs to do?
Yeah. So I would say, if you are under high levels of stress, the first thing I would say to do is actually go in and get your salivary cortisol tested. Figure out what's going on there because it's something that has such wide-ranging impacts. When we look again at some of these chronic diseases, one of the things that it comes back to in the research again and again and again is stress-related. Yeah. Right? So if we know that stress is one of these primary causes for all these chronic diseases, why are we not spending more time on that? So get it tested early and do something about it. Work with a practitioner who can help you with these types of things, right? Yeah.
Well, I gotta share this story. Guys, when I saw Dr. Carleigh last week, she said, well, tell me about your stress levels. I didn't know if I should laugh or cry. like, okay, on a 1 to 10 scale, where do we want to start with this? But with cortisol and stress levels and everything else, what I did say is this: what I don't want is just a supplement and a pill called, adrenal support that you get at the local store, because by taking that supplement, that's going to get rid of your stress levels. I said we've got to really address, if there's overwhelm, what's overwhelming you, that the things you can control if you've got too many hats. So even me personally, I'm like, okay, what are the things for me that may be stressors? Because we want stress in our life, the old inverted U theory going back to graduate school, a single state, and looking at the optimal levels of arousal, that you want stress in your life. You want eustress, not distress. EUSTRES is eustress versus distress. And even athletes who are competing at the highest level, you want a certain level of stress prior to a game on that. And here today, we do want some stress in our life, but not so much stress that it's going to rob us of our best self, energy, and including our own overall health as well. So let's get the stress in check. Dr. Carleigh is saying to help with our weight loss, fat loss, and just feeling good as well. Good. And the last one, what's the fifth one?
So the fifth one is cold. So not enough exposure to cold.
Not enough exposure to cold. So I should be spending more time in Montana in the mountains in the winter?
Maybe go to snow for a little bit.
Talk more about what do you mean by that? Cold, not enough exposure to the cold.
Yeah, so if you think about it, we live very, very temperature regulated lives, right?
Here? Are you talking like in San Diego or overall?
All over, right? So even if you are living somewhere like the Midwest and it gets cold in the winter, you're still living in a house where you're probably going to have a lot of heat, you're bundled up, and you're very rarely going to be outside of this kind of range of maybe say like 65 to 75 degrees, right? Okay. So one of the things that, metabolic researchers are starting to understand is that lack of exposure to cold is actually changing the way that our body stores and uses and burns fat, right? So inside of our bodies, we've got 3 different types of fat. So we have one called white adipose tissue, and that is your traditional belly fat that everyone wants to lose, right? It just kind of sits there. It's essentially just stored energy, right? It's just waiting for your body to need it to get used up.
No good.
Yeah, no good. It's got no mitochondria in it, and that's the main thing about it, right? Mitochondria being those energy-producing powerhouses. Yeah, exactly. So no mitochondria in that white adipose tissue. It's what everyone's trying to get rid of.
Okay.
Then we have our brown adipose tissue, and this exists more along the sternum, the rib cage, essentially around the internal organs, right? And its function is something called cold thermogenesis, meaning that it contains mitochondria, and whenever the body gets cold, it starts to generate heat, right? Okay. It uses energy to do that, right? So what that means is that this brown fat can create a similar stimulus as working out just by being exposed to cold, right? So a similar burn of energy and calories just by creating heat, right? So what's really interesting about it is that we can actually turn white fat into something called beige fat, which mimics brown fat by simply exposing ourselves to more cold. Right?
Where do I read more about this?
So you can read more about it like Wim Hof, I would say, is one of the guys who talks a lot about this, right? There's also someone, I'm not sure exactly if he's written any books or anything, but his name is Metabolic Mike on Instagram.
Metabolic Mike. So this is a scientific thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you say exposure to cold, are you talking cold showers? Are you talking ice baths? Are you talking cryotherapy? All of it? What?
It could be all of the above. Okay. Sometimes the cold plunges can be a little bit too intense for people to get into at first. But the basic that you need is to just end your showers with cold for 2 to 5 minutes. And that's a great place to start. Sure. Now, you can get into the cold plunges and the polar plunges and cryo and all that type of stuff. But for the average everyday person, just end your showers on cold enough to develop a little bit of a shiver while you're in there for 2 to 5 minutes. And that'll do it.
So your five reasons weight loss isn't working that have nothing to do with diet or exercise. Hormones are out of balance. Blood sugar swings. Your gut health. Stress levels are too high. And you got to expose yourself to more cold. Okay. Now, that is not at the expense of not working out and not eating.
You got to have those foundations in there.
Okay, good. Carleigh, anything else? I wanted to share the four different doctors today, and I want to talk about this. Where can one find out more about Dr. Carleigh GoLightly?
Absolutely. So best place to go is my website is www.empowermedclinic.com. And I've got, all the information about me, about my practice. And then also I have a blog section on there along with a bunch of videos that I've recorded, articles that I've written, things along those lines. Yeah. And then secondarily, I would say go to my Instagram, which is Dr. Carleigh GoLightly.
Carleigh,
if there's one thing that you are doing particularly well for your health these days, what is it? Is there like this fountain of youth supplement that you are taking, or is there a certain hack that you're using? Is there something new that you just found that you're like, man, I'm doing this red light therapy, or I'm doing this or that? Is there anything that you are currently using that you're fascinated by?
Peptides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm currently using, and I have used in the past, and I'm doing another round of it right now, a peptide called, they have horrible names. They really need to do some marketing with these names, but it's called CJC1295 and ipamorelin. Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah.
We'll put that in the show notes. Okay.
So what this peptide is, it is a growth hormone secretagogue.
Talk to me, Goose.
So basically what that means is it tells your brain to secrete more growth hormone, right? It's not growth hormone itself. It just makes that signal a little bit stronger, so you secrete a little bit more, right? Okay. So I use this primarily whenever I start a new training program and I find that I'm having a really hard time recovering from it, have a little bit more muscle soreness, achiness, and my sleep's a little bit disrupted more than usual. So I'm using it right now for another round. I did another round of it about this time last year as well. And I found that my muscle soreness plummeted. My recovery increased phenomenally well. And then I was sleeping soundly through the night, not waking up at all the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And can someone get peptides online? Do they need to see a doctor? How do they get peptides?
They're prescription only.
Okay.
Prescription only. So you'll have to see a doctor to get them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And I could go on and asking you questions, but I'm not. But I do have one more, actually. Brain fog. If there's one thing to get rid of brain fog, because everyone's got not everyone. A lot of people have brain fog these days. What's that one ingredient or thing that someone could do to help with brain fog?
One ingredient for brain.
Is there a supplement, or is there a hack or something that's not, people are like, I'm not thinking clearly these days, or I feel like I'm in a little bit of a whirl. So some of the questions that are coming in from our listeners is, what's your thought on brain fog? So let me ask the expert here. Is there something that you recommend? Yeah,
that's a really good question. So for brain fog, I mean, the number one thing that I come back to with people is figuring out, like, what the heck are you eating every single day? Because that is a primary cause of brain fog. Stress levels also have to do with that as well, 100%. Right? So those two things are all in it. But one of the, I would say supplementally, one of the things that I find really helpful is using something called bacopa. It's an herb, actually, and the primary action of it is to increase blood flow to the brain, right? So it's also an adaptogen, which means that it's really helpful for stress levels, right? So it's kind of got a 1-2 action there. Okay. So bacopa can be really helpful.
What is it called?
Bacopa.
Bacopa.
Yeah. BACOPA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bacopa.
Bacopa.
Very good. There you have it, my friends. Everything from brain fog to the leaky gut syndrome on up to the 4 doctors and how to lose fat and weight if you're already exercising and eating well. Dr. Carleigh GoLightly, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
My friends, there you have it. Another great episode. We're talking today everything from exercise, nutrition, mindset, and what to do on a naturopathic level to get your body, mind, and soul all working right. Remember, if you enjoyed today's show and you found value in it, do us a favor. Please share it on your social media, in your emails, on your newsletter, whatever you can do to spread the gospel of motivation, inspiration, and great health would be kindly appreciated. And also, please, if you have not yet gone over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating, it helps us skyrocket up the charts so that we can continue to do this show and do great things for the world. Until next time, remember, train hard, eat right, live inspired, and go make the world a better place. Peace and God bless.